exhaust system arrived. This is the GT Haus, I believe, Meisterschaft GTC for the M6. Here's the mufflers. Here's the midsection. All very nicely packaged. This is the M6 factory exhaust at idle. I'm gonna pull it in. Got the M6 in the lift. Need to pull the exhaust off. Just got a couple bolts and hangers. Alright. Exhaust is off. The exhaust is mostly on. I'm kind of doing the final adjustments and fitment. Just to note, I think these are actually fairly okay, but the clamps are adjusted from the factory, so that's how they went on. But I have a stock diffuser on the back of my M6. You can see there is room, but it's really tight, and if you move this, I don't have it quite sitting on the exhaust hanger. I don't have it all the way at the edge. If I do that, it actually hits the side of the diffuser over here on this one, and it's kind of the opposite for the driver's side. Now, as we come underneath the car, there's a few other concerns I have. So obviously this exhaust is a larger diameter than the factory exhaust that's on the floor right now. So, sorry, I'm trying not to move the camera too fast. You can see how it's routed up under here. There is a plate that goes in place right here. It's off to the side. So it looks like that. And I think the exhaust will clear the plate no problem. But what I'm running into is up here. So this is the control, actually the rear subframe. It's not really a control arm. And you can see how tight this exhaust is. Now I have it slid back about as far as I can get it. And you can see this is a little bit narrower than we have where it was welded. This is kind of big and it's right on this edge. So if I move the exhaust, actually I have to move pretty hard. Okay, I lied. It's not going to hit, I don't think. Maybe if it was really violent. Whoops, that's a clamp. Sorry if that was loud. Alright, as we come through underneath the car, I also have this, I think it's a velocity box is what they called it. This X pipe basically. And you can see it is really close, but it seems to be okay. Just like this heat shield, I kind of had to adjust it a little bit, but it is tight. And coming up here, installing the front is actually pretty easy. This one went right on the driver's side. The passenger side we struggled with. I don't know why it was tighter. It's pretty hard to mess up. It's got, if I come down to the factory one, it has an exhaust donut on it here, then an exhaust donut, and then a gasket there. So donut, replace that. Probably should replace this as well. I think you call it a spacer, and you replace the two copper nuts on either side. Because this was a brand new car, they came right off. So it's very easy. Okay, it's definitely louder. Significantly louder. This is after cold start. Valves are open, as you can see. Let me try and close this one real quick. Let's see. We'll wire that up in the trunk later. No exhaust leaks. All looks good. This is the trunk of the M6. I want to disconnect the active sound design, which is like an amplifier that just pumps fake speaker noise or fake exhaust noise through the speakers in the interior of the car. I don't need that because I have real noise. And then I also want to get to the vacuum solenoid that controls the valves on the exhaust itself, so I can hook this up. The Meisterschaft valves work opposite of the factory. They're open by default, whereas the factory ones are closed by default. So in this car, if I were to hook it up as it is right to the car, it's going to be loud when you start it up and drive it normally, and then when you floor it, it's going to get quiet. So it's kind of weird. Now, I do want the valves hooked up on this because we took it out for a test drive, and it does have like a very significant drone between about 1800 and maybe 2100 RPM. Around 2000 RPMs or so, it does drone a little bit. Probably can't see this, it's all dark. But right around there, this is what the valves open. So I need to get it out of that ear bleeding mode. So it's like right about 60 miles an hour, 55 miles an hour. If you're cruising in 6th gear, you actually have to downshift to try and get it outside of the drone range. These nice little shiny metal buttons that the trunk kind of sits on when it closes, they spin out. Now this car, they've already been removed. It looks like it might need a special tool, sort of like the tool you'd use to pull the back of a watch off. But on mine, you can see there were marks down here. That's not from me. And like here, I don't know if you can see it in the video, but they've clearly been removed before, so I'm not sure why someone was back here. Yeah, you can see how chewed up this is. I don't know why they were back there. This just kind of sits underneath of, you can't see there, it sits underneath the weather stripping, so it just pulls out. I got that piece pulled out. You can see there's electrical wiring back here. Not too much to get to or anything exciting. So we'll continue to take this side, this left side of the trim panel out. And again, sorry, it's very dark. And I think to do that, we've got a push pin up here. This anchor probably has to come out. We've definitely got a push pin right there. After carefully removing this liner, and probably the hardest part is navigating this out, this like hole here around this arm for the trunk. You can see all the electronics back here. It seems the active sound design ECU on the M6 is located here, whereas on the M5 it's actually up here on this bracket. On vehicles equipped with Harman Kardon and Bang & Olufsen sound like this car, you can just unplug this connector apparently, and it will remove the fake engine noise from your speakers and leave your stereo intact. If the car has a lower end stereo, unplugging this apparently can disable the audio. The solenoid that controls the exhaust valves is right here, and actually it was not even on this hanger, so again another indication that maybe this car's been messed with. But what I'm going to do, I already unplugged this. You just kind of push in on the clip and you pull it up. This is the factory control. There is 12 volts run back to this, and it is grounded through the ECU to actuate the solenoid. This is vacuum running up to the engine. Should have vacuum all the time, and this goes out to the mufflers. So what I'm going to do is see if I can't plug the controller from GT Haus into the factory solenoid and control it directly using that instead of the factory engine computer. From what I understand, and we'll see if this is true, unplugging this will set a shadow code, but it shouldn't set a check engine light. I'm debating what to do here. This is the solenoid supplied by GT Haus. I think I can plug this directly into the vacuum lines that exist and leave the factory solenoid electrically connected. So that is an option. Or we can do what I just discussed, which is plug this. This is the wiring harness supplied by GT Haus directly into the solenoid. From what I can see, they do look like they would be compatible. I'm back, and you can see the wiring harness has changed somewhat. This is a connector to plug into the factory harness on the car. So the intention here is to pull positive voltage from the factory connector, and this is important because that is what's called terminal 15, or it's only has voltage present when the car is in run. It turns off once the car is completely off. Now, GT Haus's instructions say just to wire this to power. However, I hooked this up to my bench power supply, and if the valves are, I think, closed, this continues to pull power as it holds the solenoid open. Now, it actually pulls about 1/3 of an amp to a 1/2 amp the entire time, so that's going to kill your battery if this is hooked directly up to the battery. When the valves are open and the solenoid is off, it's drawing about 1/100th of an amp, which isn't too bad. Like, it could stay that way for a very long time, but it's still going to show up as a power loss in your car. So instead, I opted to wire this directly to terminal 15, so we will not have that problem. This also seems to remember its state when it loses power, so that will be fine. Now, I do wish they included this, because I had to pull this connector off a Vanos solenoid I've had laying around for like the last 10 years. And it just so happens to fit. So I was able to figure it out and make it work. And then this, on the other side, will just get grounded. That still has to get grounded because, again, on the factory one, the way the solenoid is actuated is the ground is switched, but your positive voltage is terminal 15, so it's hot all the time in run, and it's also fused, so we don't need to worry about the fuse. Still a 5 amp fuse, and that should allow this to work. I turned the ignition on. I saw a green light come on this. I did not catch that on camera. Let's see if it works. Alright, I don't know what the clicking sound is, if it's this or something else. But it does seem to work. Okay, so it works technically. It's the best kind of works, right? But the problem is it sounds like a camera flash charging, and here's what I mean. I'm gonna go plug this in. It's currently unplugged from the power, so off camera, plugging it in. Hear that? That sounds like, that high-pitched whine sounds like a camera flash. You can hear it inside the car when you're driving. So, what I've done is I took an alligator clip and I plugged it in from here and jumped it over to the battery, and it was fine. So I think the next step is for me to put a relay in. I'm back quite a long time later, off camera, and what I did is I added this relay in, old BMW relay. So it pulls power from the battery, but it's still signaled off of the battery on signal. So terminal 15, it's 15N on this car. So that means that the exhaust valve thing closes when the car is off. It does not work. But once the car is on, it has power, and now it doesn't do the clicking. So hopefully the whine is gone as well. I'm wiring up or rather plumbing up the valves. The valves on the Meisterschaft exhaust are on the opposite side. So they're inboard on the car. Compared to on the factory exhaust, it would have been on the outboard side. And what that means is the factory vacuum line does not fit. You have to extend it. GT Haus does include the extra vacuum line in the remote kit. And I can tell you it's not a very comfortable job. You probably can't see up here. Let me see if I can brighten that up again. But there's not much room for your hand, and you have to get up there and put an inline splice, which, okay, I can't even get the light up there for you. But it's up there. And I got it tucked up over top the bumper support so it doesn't fall into the hot exhaust and melt. So that's one side done. Now I gotta do this side. You can see my capped off vacuum line here. This one actually runs across the bumper here and over. So it should actually be too long from the factory, which means I should be able to relocate it over to this valve here, and then we can see if this works. All right, moment of truth. You can hear how loud it is. That's the key for the car. I need the actual key. I have to yell to hear myself over top the exhaust. All right, so here we go. Here's the remote. It works. So that's closed. Open. Closed. Open. If you like this content, please like and subscribe.